Discover the amazing truth. My son's shocking support led to an unexpected, transformative moment. Jane stood in the tiny kitchen of their small Midwestern home, steam rising from a pot of soup on the stove, her mind swirling with anxiety. She'd just received the email confirming her promotion at the hospital, an opportunity she had been painstakingly working toward for years. But as her heart raced with excitement, a cold wave of fear washed over her. What would it mean for Danny? Would she have to sacrifice their time together just when he needed her most? Long hours at the hospital had already stretched her thin, juggling jobs to make sure they could put food on the table. Yet for Danny, her sacrifices had always been a source of strength. Today, she felt a weight settling deeper within her. What if Danny's kindness campaign at school faltered without her support? Her struggles were not alien to her. She had always disguised them with a smile, pushing forward for the sake of her son, the one true light in her life. But now, staring at the email notification on her phone, she felt torn like a tightrope walker with no safety net below. What am I doing? She quietly questioned herself, glancing at the clock ticking away their precious minutes together. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As she served Danny his soup, he looked up at her with concern shadowing his young face. Mom, I've been thinking... His voice faltered, a trace of vulnerability slipping through his usual bravado. A lot of kids at school are struggling like me. I want to start a kindness campaign, to change things, he said, passion igniting in his words, but colliding with her nagging doubt. This was the very energy that she had nurtured, yet she couldn't shake the anxiety that stirred in her stomach. What if there wasn't enough space for both your dreams? Her mind raced. She admired his determination, but felt the crushing burden of her own ambition clawing at her insides. But I have to do well at work first, Danny. Make sure we're okay, she replied, the tremor in her voice betraying her resolve. She found herself straddling a line, facing complex choices that both thrilled and terrified her. Danny, his young brow furrowed, considered her words. Fear gripped him as he recognized that she might pave a different path, one that could leave him behind. Would that be the legacy she chose over him? The air between them thickened, filled with unspoken fears and unexamined dreams. She couldn't help but wonder about her worth, both as a mother and a nurse. Was climbing the ladder of success truly worth losing the very essence of her life, her son's comfort? In that moment of silence, her world felt like it was tilting, a precarious balance where every choice felt monumental. The path ahead was steeped in uncertainty, and Jane found herself standing at a precipice, unsure which way to leap. The quiet of the kitchen was punctuated only by the clattering of utensils, echoing the unraveling thoughts in Jane's mind. As she sat across from Danny, she watched the steam from the soup curl up toward the ceiling, mirroring the upward lift of her ambitions. Yet instead of excitement, dread settled heavily into her stomach. Success at the hospital came at a cost, one that could uproot the foundation she had built with Danny. His small hands cradled the warm bowl, the innocence in his eyes contrasting sharply with the turbulent emotions within her. She could feel the stakes rising, making her pulse quicken as she weighed her next words. Danny, I want you to know how proud I am of you, she began, her voice a blend of warmth and urgency. Your kindness campaign? It's incredible, and I think it can help so many kids. Vulnerability flickered across his face, and she wondered if he sensed the hesitation lacing her praise. But, he prodded, his youthful sincerity cutting straight through her, searching for the truth hidden in her heart. But, it's a simple word, yet it felt like a chasm between them, a gap full of uncertainty. She took a deep breath, feeling compelled to share her fears. "I just worry about managing everything, both at work and at home. I need to be there for you, and I know I'll be busy." "Mom, I understand, but if you care about these things, can't we make it work together?" His earnestness struck a chord. The connection he was trying to forge filled her with hope and guilt all at once. Could a shared commitment to his mission help bridge the gap looming over their lives? Jane's instincts were conflicted. The weight of her responsibilities at the hospital pressed heavily on her. Every shift, every decision felt monumental, and her promotion demanded her full attention. Was it fair to expect her son to bear the responsibility of change? But standing before him, she couldn't shake the realization that his awareness of social issues might spark a profound transformation in both of them. "Maybe we could come up with a plan together," she suggested, tentative yet emboldened by Danny's fiery idealism. "Something that fits both our schedules. I can help you work on the campaign in my off hours." Danny perked up, eyes shining, his excitement tangible. "Really? Like a team?" "Yes, a team," Jane echoed, a wave of determination washing over her. She envisioned weekends spent strategizing over posters and planning activities, their bond deepening through shared goals. It felt like a leap into the unknown, but perhaps that was the kind of risk she needed to embrace, both as a nurse and as a mother. That evening, they mapped out preliminary ideas at the kitchen table, their laughter melding with the mundane hum of home. The sense of unity they forged felt invigorating, igniting a spark in Jane that had long been dormant. Yet even amidst this camaraderie, Jane was acutely aware that a balancing act was ahead. How could she navigate the demanding world of healthcare while ushering in this new journey with Danny? The hours weighted heavy, time slipping through her fingers like grains of sand. As she sank into bed that night, the dim light casting shadows on the walls, doubts clawed back to the forefront of her thoughts. Would this partnership strengthen their bond or fracture under the pressure of dual obligations? With each tick of the clock, Jane felt the tension rise anew, and as sleep eluded her, it became clear that her decision to embark on this path might reveal more than she ever anticipated about her own limits and capabilities. The moment of truth was fast approaching, not just for Danny's campaign, but for her rediscovery of self, a test that might redefine both their futures. The next morning, the sound of the alarm pierced the lingering shadows of Jane's restless sleep. She rolled over, squeezing her eyes shut as if she could shut out the day ahead. The bed felt comforting in its familiarity, cocooning her in a moment of stillness that would soon give way to the whirlwind of responsibilities waiting outside her bedroom door. With a reluctant groan, she swung her legs out of bed and planted her feet on the cool floor. Today marked the beginning of their new plan, their commitment to blend work and home life into a cohesive partnership. However, as she stood to stretch, the weight of her responsibilities settled heavily upon her shoulders. The doubt that had taunted her all night resurfaced. Would her commitment truly help Danny? Or would it pull them both into a chaotic spiral of unmet expectations? Walking into the kitchen, Jane found Danny already seated at the table, a notebook sprawled before him filled with sketches and ideas for his kindness campaign. The sight filled her with both pride and unease. How far would they go together? Would she be able to deliver on her promise to shape this project while maintaining her demanding role at the hospital? "Good morning, Mom," Danny beamed, not noticing the anxiety crossing her face. "Morning, sweetie." She forced a smile and poured herself a cup of coffee, feeling the warmth of the mug seep into her hands as a momentary comfort. "Check this out," he exclaimed, flipping the pages of his notebook. "I was thinking we could create a series of gratitude cards for kids in the hospital. Something to make them feel special." Jane studied his enthusiasm, and for a fleeting second, she felt the spark of inspiration igniting inside her. Perhaps this was exactly what she needed, a creative channel that could not only bring her closer to Danny, but also reinvigorate her professional passion. "That's a wonderful idea, Danny. I can help you gather supplies, and we can even plan a little workshop." Yet as her mind danced with visions of colorful cards and laughter filling the hospital hallway, a knock jolted her back to the present. It was her colleague, Emily, entering with a notepad and an urgency in her voice. "Jane, we need to talk about the patient load for today. It's going to be intense." The contrast of that world, demanding, clinical, ruled by deadlines, hit her like a wave crashing against the shore. "Okay, I'll be there in a minute," she replied, internally grappling with the tug-of-war between her professional duties and the campaign she had promised Danny. Once dressed and out the door, Jane found herself in the car, still feeling the lingering resonance of Danny's expectation. She had repeatedly pulled late shifts, dormant in her routine, yet now the prospect of working together brought forth a simmering desire for change. But would it be enough to push her past the familiar confines of self-doubt and exhaustion that often clouded her ambitions? Arriving at the hospital, the familiar sights and sounds wrapped around her like an old blanket, comforting yet suffocating. Every patient brought their own challenges, each demand creeping into her mind like a vine wrapping around her thoughts. As she prepped for her shift, she reflected on the fragility of her personal mission. Would juggling both responsibilities lead to fulfillment or fracture her family further? In the afternoon, as she faced the demanding waves of patients and colleagues, a moment of clarity struck. She caught a glimpse of a hospital art project from a previous initiative, a colorful mural filled with messages of hope and gratitude. Suddenly, the light bulb moment flickered brightly. There was an opportunity here that transcended her initial apprehension. What if Danny's campaign could integrate with the hospital's existing projects? Energized, she spent an unexpected moment sketching out initial ideas on a spare notepad, a plan slowly forming. This could be their bridge, the intersection of personal passion and professional calling. But as her shift drawn to a close, fatigue washed over her again, like a fog threatening to obscure her vision. The question remained, could she truly balance her growing commitments without losing herself and her son in the process? A familiar tension knotted her stomach. Today had offered a glimpse of potential, but uncertainty loomed like a shadow. The next step would be crucial, not only for the bond with Danny, but also for her rediscovery of purpose. Standing in the quiet hospital hallway, Jane took a deep breath and realized the day would come when she would need to confront the doubts rejecting her desires. Would she rise to the challenge, or would fear hold her hostage once more? The road ahead seemed daunting, but perhaps not as lonely as it once felt. With a parting glance at her notes, she resolved to bring Danny's dream into the fold of her reality. Tonight, they would plan together as their team, together, stepping into the unknown. But as she made her way home, another question haunted her mind. How much was she willing to risk for the sake of their dream? As Jane pulled into the driveway, her heart raced. The quiet evening enveloped her like a cocoon, but the weight of her earlier revelations clung just as palpably. She stepped into the house, focusing on the rhythm of her breathing, as if it were a mantra guiding her through the anxieties festering in her mind. "Mom, look!" Danny's voice broke through her thoughts as he waved her over to the dining table, now strewn with colored paper, scissors, and markers. His eyes sparkled with an infectious excitement, his earlier ambition now taking tangible form. "All right, what did you come up with?" she asked, trying to match his enthusiasm, but grappling with the persistent nagging of doubt that filled her mind. "I've been sketching some designs for the cards," he exclaimed, showcasing his handiwork. Each card bore colorful drawings, simple but filled with heart, a vibrant sun, smiling faces, and messages like, "You are brave, and you are loved." Jane observed her son, realizing how deeply this project resonated with him. It was more than just a campaign at the hospital. It was something that validated his existence and his feelings about the world. The way he poured his heart into his art spoke volumes, not just about him, but about the connection they were building. Yet, it also reminded her of how she had often suppressed her own passions under the weight of adult responsibilities. "There's so much here, Danny," she affirmed, a wave of warmth swelling within her. "These will resonate with the kids. But we need to think about how we can involve the hospital, too. We want it to be a team effort." Danny nodded eagerly, his energy palpable. "I was thinking we could ask the nurses or therapists to help us. Maybe they have ideas about what the kids would like to hear." As they brainstormed together for hours, she felt each exchange shattering the self-imposed barriers she had lived behind for so long. They envisioned a workshop filled with laughter, where children would create their own cards and share their stories. Each idea sparked in Jane's mind like fireworks, slowly illuminating a path toward reinvention, both personally and professionally. By the time they finished, a sense of purpose enveloped her. They had outlined a way to mesh Danny's innocent creativity with her professional expertise, forming a framework that could bridge both worlds. The shared labor brought a giddy thrill, temporarily taking away the exhaustion that clung to her like a shadow. However, the nervous energy soon morphed into a deeper concern. She was terrified that she would still have to confront the demands of her job. Would her supervisors be supportive of this added responsibility? What if the combination of the hospital's expectations and her personal goals became too much to handle? As the night wore on, dread crept back in, pulling her thoughts toward the intricacies of her job. The more she planned with Danny, the more she felt a looming deadline approaching, an ultimatum that threatened to either deliver them both into the future they envisioned or push them into a spiral of disappointment instead. The paradox twisted in her gut. Her son brought fresh energy and purpose, yet the gravity of her role at the hospital hovered like a relentless storm cloud above them. She closed her eyes, grappling with the conflicting feelings that swirled within her. In the end, her decision was profound, yet inexplicable. Her son's unwavering support inspired a latent courage she hadn't recognized before. But with this clarity came the realization that their journey would demand sacrifices she hadn't yet understood. Tomorrow would bring a meeting with her supervisor, a session meant to discuss her workload, but now it had evolved into a reckoning. Would she dare to voice her intent to entwine Danny's kindness campaign into her professional agenda? Standing at the threshold of potential transformation, Jane made a silent promise to herself and to Danny. She would fight to pursue this vision, no matter how daunting the task appeared. But as she tucked Danny into bed later that night, a chilling thought pierced through her resolve. Could she withstand the challenge, even if it meant facing her own limitations? The moment of truth loomed before her, ready to demand answers she wasn't sure she had. As mornings often do, sunlight poured through the curtains the next day, spilling light across the room and illuminating the hopes and fears simmering beneath Jane's calm facade. She woke up with a pulse of urgency thrumming in her ears, each beat a reminder of the reckoning ahead. The trepidation that followed her like a shadow was compounded by the knowledge that today would either affirm her vision or dismantle it at the seams. In the hustle of preparing for work, her mind drifted to the possibilities that lay ahead. What if she approached her supervisor with a detailed proposal? What if she shared Danny's enthusiasm, framing their project as a significant morale booster for the children? The thought was exhilarating and terrifying. Could she articulate this vision without stuttering under pressure? Could she show her superiors that her personal investment didn't detract from her professionalism, but instead enhanced it? At the hospital, the fluorescent lights buzzed above, harsh and relentless. Each click of her shoes echoed the internal conflict raging within her. Surrounded by the familiar chaos of waiting rooms and busy nurses, she felt unusually distant from it all, a spectator in an environment she once thrived in. Her heart raced as she approached her supervisor's office, the door standing ominously ajar. Did she really want to open it and plunge into the inevitable talk about her workload? Taking a deep breath, Jane walked in. Her supervisor, Marshall, looked up from a stack of papers, his brow furrowing at the sight of her apprehension. "Jane, good to see you," Everything all right? The inquiry felt hollow. She hesitated, her thoughts swirling. Should she be transparent about the rising tide of her newfound ambitions, or play it safe? A fierce internal voice urged her to grasp the fleeting opportunity. "I want to discuss a new project," she said after a moment, her voice steadier than she felt. "It's a volunteer initiative that my son Danny and I are planning for the children in our care." Marshall raised an eyebrow, his interest piqued. "Okay, tell me more." Encouraged by his engagement, she continued, outlining her vision. Every word felt like a revelation, a rediscovered thread, melding her passion for her profession with her deep love for her son's creativity. She explained how the cards could bolster the children's spirits during difficult times, inviting them to express their feelings and connect in ways that often eluded them. Marshall listened carefully, but the mask of interest hardly obscured the calculations dancing behind his professional demeanor. "That's a compelling idea, Jane," he said cautiously. "But it also sounds resource-intensive. Have you thought about how this will impact your current duties?" His skepticism gnawed at her resolve. The flicker of vulnerability surged within her. She hadn't anticipated this reaction. Instead of retreating, however, she leaned into the challenge. "I believe it can be integrated into what I'm already doing. If I take the lead on this, it can become a part of my role rather than an addition to it." A quiet moment stretched between them, and Jane seized it, allowing the swirl of doubt within her to solidify into determination. "This project is about more than just creating cards. It's about instilling hope, teaching resilience, and fostering connections. I can work on the logistical details to ensure it aligns with our goals at the hospital." After what felt like an eternity, Marshall nodded slowly, processing her words. "I appreciate your passion, truly. But you'll need to prepare a detailed proposal and align this with our operational constraints. We can't overlook the responsibilities you already have." As he spoke, Jane felt the weight of her fears lift slightly. While his words came with limitations, they also carried an unexpected flicker of possibility. They could work together, shaping the initiative into something palatable while still allowing her to infuse it with the very essence she envisioned. It wasn't an outright rejection. "Thank you, Marshall. I appreciate your consideration," she said, a wave of relief washing over her. As she exited the office, the gravity of today's exchange replayed in her mind, and hope began to blossom anew. She had cleared the first significant hurdle, but this journey was far from over. The uncertainties that loomed still pressed against her like a tide threatening to engulf. Doubt resurfaced in her thoughts, twisting into a new form as she recalled the work ahead, the proposal, the scrutiny it would face, and the challenge of rallying support among her colleagues. But through it all, one question crystallized in her mind. Would she find the strength to withstand the pressures and push through? Or would she fall back into the shadows of compliance once more? In the quiet of her workplace, Jane resolved to push forward, even as doubt hovered just on the edge of her consciousness. She knew that challenge would be relentless, but so too would be her conviction. And as another day drew to a close, she couldn't shake the uneasiness that tinged her excitement. What if her efforts to lead and inspire would come at a cost she wasn't ready to pay? The answer seemed to loom ahead, just out of sight, and the next steps of her journey would define who she hoped to be. The following morning brought with it the tingling sensation of resolve that coursed through Jane's veins. She had woken up earlier than usual, the dawn light drawing her from her restless sleep. In that quiet interlude before the day began, she reviewed her thoughts from the previous day, her burgeoning visions swirling like eddies in a stream. The proposal loomed large, its importance pressing against her spirit, but she hadn't felt more alive in months. After sending Danny off to school, Jane found herself at the kitchen table, her laptop open and unforgivingly silent. The cursor blinked expectantly, as if mocking her hesitation. How to transform her vision into a proposal that could withstand scrutiny? She leaned into the challenge, envisioning the cards not just as pieces of art, but as vessels of healing, tools that could facilitate expression where words often fell short. As she typed, each sentence crystallized her thoughts. The children at the hospital faced insurmountable odds, yet with tools like these cards, there was a chance to weave hope into their narratives. She could argue for the psychological benefits, the therapeutic angles, even empirical data showcasing the power of creative expression in healing. With every word, she felt the weight of responsibility, but also the rush of possibility. If she could just communicate this clearly, it might resonate with others. A sudden knock at the door startled her from her reverie. A neighbor, Mrs. Hargrove, stood at the threshold, her face scrunched with concern. They exchanged pleasantries, but Jane couldn't shake the nagging feeling that her neighbor's visit was more than just a friendly check-in. "Jane, is everything all right? You've seemed distracted lately," Mrs. Hargrove probed, her intuitive gaze searching Jane's. Caught off guard, Jane felt the weight of her private ambitions collide with her reality. How could she articulate her journey, her drive to forge a path both for herself and for the children? "I'm actually working on a proposal for the hospital," she finally admitted, vulnerability creeping into her voice. "It's about a project to promote emotional expression through art, something my son inspired." The older woman's eyes sparkled with interest, and Jane realized she craved this kind of connection, the validation that revealed the depth of her determination. They discussed the concept further, and seeing her idea reflected back through Mrs. Hargrove's encouraging words ignited something within Jane. She saw new angles in her project, perspectives she hadn't considered before, the importance of outreach, community involvement, and rallying support. When Mrs. Hargrove left, Jane felt buoyed. With the hours stretching ahead of her, she deconstructed her proposal, carefully piecing together a framework that included not only the emotional benefits for the children, but detailed logistics and potential challenges. She consulted her notes on the best practices of similar projects, while actively eliminating fears from her psyche, channeling that energy into her writing instead. Then came the moment she had anxiously anticipated all day. After drafting the initial outline, she confronted the scrappy and chaotic nature of her first proposal. It needed edits, revisions, graphs, and statistics. Each section required a multifaceted reflection of both her ambition and the real-world implications of her idea. The proposal transformed from a mere document into an embodiment of her identity, her fears, hopes, and the relentless push against complacency. Just as she was wrapping things up, an email notification popped up. It was Marshall. His words were encouraging, but came with cautions, an acknowledgement of her initiative, yet a subtle reminder of the scrutiny it would inevitably face. As she read through the message, a familiar pulse of doubt began to thrum at the edges of her enthusiasm. Would it withstand the challenge? As much as she had poured her heart into it, was it enough? Jane took a moment to breathe, feeling uncertainty creeping back into her thoughts, nagging questions of her worth fluttering like moths to light. This was more than just a project. It was a chance to redefine her role, to mold her future. But then another realization settled in. If she truly believed in this initiative, she would not shy away from the confrontation. She would confront, negotiate, and defend her vision. And so, Jane gathered her notes and prepared for her next step, her heart racing as she thought about presenting her refined proposal. Tomorrow would be a day of reckoning, one where she would either solidify her self-worth or unravel before the very people she wished to inspire. The moment of vulnerability hummed at the edges of her consciousness, pressing her onward. With the weight of her aspirations urging her forward, Jane resolved to face whatever consequences lied ahead, whether triumph or defeat, and in that commitment she found a nascent strength rising within her. As the sun set, casting long shadows across her kitchen, she recognized that tomorrow would not just shape her journey, it would define her very self. But as she shut her laptop, an unsettling thought loomed near. What if, in the authenticity of her proposal, she uncovered something about herself she wasn't prepared to face? The morning light filtered through the curtains, a soft reminder that today was pivotal. Jane's heart raced, not just from anxiety, but from an evolving sense of purpose. As she sipped her coffee, she found herself staring at the proposal, a printed version cradled in her hands. It was a tangible embodiment of her thoughts, a testament to nights spent wrestling with her ambitions and insecurities. This was not merely a document. It represented her evolution, her willingness to step into the unknown. She could sense the fear bubbling beneath the surface, a fear that had chased her for years. But today could be different. Today, she would face the scrutiny of the board with the fervor of a warrior stepping onto a battlefield, armed with conviction. Each anticipated question that might come her way echoed in her mind. Why is art important in a clinical setting? How can emotional expression materially affect recovery? What were her qualifications for spearheading such an innovative program? As she walked to the hospital, each step felt weighted with purpose. The bright morning sun was laden with paradox, shining light on her path while simultaneously casting shadows filled with doubt. Perhaps it wasn't only the formal presentation before the board she was preparing for. It was also a confrontation with her inner critic. The voice that had whispered for years that she was not enough pressed closer, clamoring for attention. What if they see through your facade? It taunted. What if you fail? Yet, there was resilience swelling within her. With each heartbeat, another question arose from the depths of her reflective self. What if they believe in her vision? What if they could see the burning drive that lay behind her eyes? This question swelled like a tide, washing away some of that lingering fear, brightening her resolve. Upon arriving at the hospital, the familiar scents washed over her, antiseptics mingling with a hint of hope that drifted through the bustling corridors. She took a moment to steady herself, grounding her thoughts. Finding a quiet corner, she rehearsed her opening statement. Each word was a reclaiming of her identity, an assertion of her right to take this stand. When it was time, she entered the conference room, her pulse quickening with each stride. The board members were seated, their expressions neutral, but their presence felt powerful. As she positioned herself in front of them, Jane felt an echo of the doubt that had shadowed her, but she pushed it aside. This was her moment. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice steady, but betraying a hint of the vulnerability she had embraced. "Today, I'm proposing an innovative approach to emotional healing through art for the children at our facility." As she spoke, describing how the cards could foster expression and healing, a new sense of agency ignited within her. She cited the psychological benefits, shared heartfelt anecdotes, and detailed logistics. Gradually, her nerves transformed into passion that enraptured her audience, visibly shifting their anticipatory expressions. Art is not just external expression. It's an internal journey, she emphasized, meeting their gazes with unwavering determination. For children facing hardships, this can be a bridge to communicate their fears and hopes. They deserve that chance. When she finished, the room erupted with questions, not accusations, but genuine curiosity. One member probed deeper into potential challenges. Another sought clarification on funding avenues. Jane answered each inquiry with clarity, surprising herself with the depth and breadth of her knowledge. Suddenly, amidst the serious exchange, a thought unbidden surfaced. What if this was her unveiling? What if she had the power to impact lives beyond the four walls of this room? Would the acceptance from the board validate her choice to step forward, or would it merely echo the whispers of doubt that had chased her? Just as she began to feel momentum surge, there came a sharp interruption. A voice, familiar and intimidating, cut through the dialogue. "This sounds ambitious, Jane, but are you truly prepared for the backlash it may bring?" It was Marshall's voice. The doubt once again clawed back, but this time she wouldn't flinch. Would she challenge this new uncertainty? Her heart raced as she locked eyes with him, the answer determining the next stage of her personal growth. The stakes were high. This was more than a project to her. It was a fundamental redefinition of who she was becoming. Feeling the support of her passion, she stepped forward. Marshall, I've faced doubts before, both internal and external. Maybe that's what makes this project significant. It's the potential for growth not just for these children, but also for me. The room fell silent. Jane realized that her willingness to confront Marshall's skepticism was a turning point. She could sense the board's shift in dynamics, witnessing respect bloom amidst uncertainty. The meeting was far from over, but one thing was clear. She was stepping into a larger role, ready to confront whatever lay beyond. With a newfound sense of strength, Jane felt she was on the cusp of discovering one more truth about herself. This journey that may lead to revelations she had not anticipated, making her question whether she could truly anchor her identity in the aspects she was finally uncovering. Jane took a deep breath, her heart still pounding with adrenaline from Marshall's interruption. The atmosphere in the conference room was charged with an electrifying tension, each board member's expression a mix of curiosity and scrutiny. It was no longer just about her proposal. It was about proving her worth, about transforming an age-old perspective that saw art as frivolous in the face of clinical expertise. Marshall's question still echoed in her mind, a haunting reminder of the battles she had fought, both within herself and externally. Was she prepared for backlash? The very thought sent a shiver down her spine. But wasn't that the essence of being brave? The acknowledgement that she might fail, but still choosing to forge ahead anyway. Focused, she crafted her response with precision. Marshall, every innovation comes with risk, but we owe it to our patients to explore every avenue that could aid their recovery. This program isn't about me, it's about them, about giving voice to their silent struggles and facilitating healing through expression. Jane's resolve ignited something in the room. It transformed the board's apprehensive faces, shifting them toward contemplation rather than judgment. It was as if a bridge had been built, one that spanned the chasm between her insecurities and her ambitions. She could feel the energy spiral in her favor, but that lingering voice of self-doubt still whispered in the recesses of her mind, urging her to play it safe. She pressed on. Art is a universal language. For children who've been stripped of their voices, we will serve as stewards of their stories. Think about it. If we empower them to express their fears creatively, could it not catalyze their emotional healing? We can set a precedent in pediatric care. Again, questions danced around her, questions that spoke of intrigue rather than criticism. What metrics will we use to measure success? One board member inquired, leaning forward with an interest that wasn't there before. Jane was ready. She shared her plan for qualitative assessments through feedback from participants and their families, rigorous tracking of emotional advancements, and partnerships with local artists for workshops. As she spoke, she could feel a transformation within herself. The imposter syndrome flickered and dimmed, replaced by the dawning realization that she was indeed knowledgeable and competent. Then came the moment of revelation. One of the board members, a physician known for his tough demeanor, finally chimed in. You seem to believe in this deeply. But tell me, what drives that belief? What's your personal connection to this initiative? The question hit her hard. She hadn't anticipated having to confront her own motivations so directly. Scrutinizing her feelings in such a public forum felt raw, yet liberating. For a brief moment she hesitated, choice hanging precariously in the air. Should she expose her vulnerabilities? I grew up in a family where expression was a means of survival. Circumstances often muted our voices, but art was where we found freedom, she began, her tone imbued with emotions she thought long buried. I found that the most profound moments of connection don't come from words, but from the shared experiences found in creative spaces. It was genuine, unguarded, and the words pierced the tensions lingering in the room. As she spoke, tears pricked her eyes, but they weren't tears of fear. They were tears of transformation. Her confession felt like shedding an old skin, one that had encased her insecurities and held her back for far too long. Realizing she had crossed a threshold, she stood taller, emboldened by her own honesty. To her surprise, she saw nods of empathy and understanding rather than resistance. Marshall's gaze softened. He was no longer an adversary, but a fellow participant in her journey. But as the meeting wound down, with discussions evolving into tangible steps for implementation, one question looming over her like a cliffhanger. What would it mean for her to stand fully in her truth beyond this room? The positive reception was palpable, yet the deeper implications ignited a simmering anxiety within her. As they concluded, Jane knew she was on the cusp of a defining moment that could change not only the lives of the children she aimed to reach, but also her own path forward. Would embracing this journey lead her to a place of true authenticity, or would she grapple with the aftermath of claiming her voice in a world that had told her to remain silent for so long? The real question hung heavily in the air. Could she navigate the complexities of her new role while remaining true to the artistic spirit that had once set her free? As she gathered her things to leave, she felt the pulse of anticipation surge, and the enigmatic possibilities unfurling before her beckoned with both excitement and trepidation. As Jane stepped out of the conference room, the fluorescent lights flickered softly above her, casting shadows that mirrored the turmoil within her mind. Each step felt different, as if the ground beneath her was shifting. She could hardly absorb the slate of endorsements and notes of support she had just received. It was a surreal dissonance. The thrumming pulse of potential that felt almost intoxicating battled with the wave of doubt threatening to drown her. The hallway was deserted, a stark contrast to the charged atmosphere of the meeting. Alone, she took a moment to ground herself, propping her back against the cool wall. The enormity of what she had just proposed pressed heavily on her chest. Had she really convinced them? Or was this an ephemeral moment of optimism likely to fade? Teetering between elation and apprehension, she felt the familiar grip of inertia tugging at her. Her mind raced back to the stories of the children, their silent struggles that resonated deeply within her. With each recounting of their experiences, the initial trembles of fear subsided, replaced by a fierce determination. What if this program was more than just a proposal? What if it transformed not only the lives of children, but her very identity? Yet she was still navigating uncharted territory. When she recalled the physiologist's question about her personal connection, Jane felt exposed. Was she genuinely prepared to be the voice for those who had been stripped of theirs? The weight of responsibility was daunting. With every layer she peeled back regarding her motives, a new surface she hadn't anticipated surfaced. Did she crave recognition, or was she acting out of a desire to help heal? Determined to celebrate the minor victories she had achieved, Jane decided to reach out to an ally. Sam, a fellow art therapist who had always believed in the power of expression. She texted him, her fingers trembling as she composed a simple message. "Can we meet? Need to talk about something important." As she awaited his response in a cozy cafe adorned with local artwork, she found herself deep in thought, her mind alternating between an optimistic future and fears of inadequacy. Would they really endorse her initiative? Would others see the same vision she fought so hard to articulate, or was she simply clouding her judgment with idealism? The bell above the cafe door chimed, pulling Jane from her reverie. Sam walked in, his familiar smile a beacon of reassurance. As they settled down with steaming mugs of coffee and pastries, she poured her heart out, relaying the highs of the meeting and unveiling her fears. "You're not alone in this, Jane," he assured her. "Change scares everyone. But remember what got you up there in the first place. You have something to share, something valuable." His conviction roused clarity in her. She wasn't merely an architect of change, she was also its embodiment. Every word, every image she shared was a ripple of authenticity. If her journey fostered even a fraction of healing, it would surely be worth the potential backlash. It was then that a poignant realization struck her. Embracing this process wasn't just about the children or the board members. It was also about her continuing evolution as an artist and a person. By stepping into her truth, she could redefine the narrative that had so long held her captive. "I want to record our progress," Jane said suddenly, her voice bolstered. "I want to document how art changes lives, both theirs and mine." The enthusiasm surged, lighting a fire within her that felt irrevocably infectious. Sam nodded appreciatively, a grin spreading across his face. Now that's the spirit. Tell that story, Jane. It's not just about therapy, it's about transformation. But with the excitement, there still loomed questions she dared not articulate fully. What if the expectations she set for herself became burdens rather than liberating pursuits? What if the very act of sharing her truth exposed deeper insecurities and vulnerabilities she had long fought to bury? As they wrapped up and the conversation shifted to the mundane, Jane's mind flickered back to her ambitions, both exhilarating and paralyzing. She had opened the door to her journey, but what awaited her on the other side? With their coffee still warm and laughter cascading between them, she felt another juncture ahead, a threshold that hinted at both turmoil and exploration. Could she face the duality of her mission while gracefully owning her voice in a world eager to silence it? At that moment, she decided. The path might twist through uncertainty, but she would embrace it head-on. They might be laboring to change others' lives, but in doing so, she would change her own. What began as a conversation about a proposal was morphing into a dialogue about self-discovery, one she wasn't yet ready to define, but one that beckoned her to take the next step into a world where every hesitation could lead to monumental growth. Would she seize that opportunity, or would she allow fear to constrict her potential once again? The answers danced just beyond her grasp, daring her to reach out. With the dawn of a new day, Jane stood in front of her bathroom mirror, her face reflecting the unease that had settled in her gut. Today was the day she unveiled the fully developed proposal of the Kindness Campaign, a fusion of Danny's dreams and her own desire for meaningful change in their lives. She had spent countless hours perfecting the documents, addressing each potential concern the board might raise. Yet on this particular morning, a creeping vulnerability wrapped around her, casting doubt on the course she had chosen. As she prepared for work, her thoughts oscillated between confidence and fear. The meeting loomed just hours away, and she could all too vividly imagine her colleagues' reactions, some intrigued, others skeptical. Would they embrace her passion and support the initiative, or would they dismiss her ideas as whims of an idealist? Taking a steadying breath, Jane recalled the conversations with Danny, the gleam in his eyes as they shared their dreams. This is for him, she reminded herself silently. This is for the children. This was no longer just a proposal. It was a promise she made to her son and herself to bring forth the change that echoed in their hearts. Arriving at the hospital, Jane felt the familiar swirl of routine encompassing her. The sights and sounds of bustling nurses, beeping machinery, and the scent of antiseptic filled the air around her like armor. As she walked to the conference room, she felt anticipation coursing through her veins, each step echoing her growing confidence. Once inside the room, Jane set up her laptop, preparing to present her proposal. When her colleagues arrived, she saw familiar faces. Some were friends, others mere acquaintances, and some, she feared, would question her motives. As she paced in front of them, Jane felt the energy shift. She waved her hand gently, commanding their attention. "Thank you for being here," she began, her voice strong yet welcoming. "Today, I'm excited to share a project that has emerged from my heart and my commitment as both a nurse and a mother, a kindness campaign aimed at enhancing emotional expression through art for the children in our care." As she articulated her vision, Jane felt her connection with both Danny and the patients pulse within her, like an electrifying current. The board listened intently, their expressions a mix of curiosity and skepticism. "This initiative is not just about creating beautiful cards," she emphasized. "It's about giving a voice to those unable to articulate their fears and hopes and fostering resilience through emotional expression." With carefully prepared visuals, Jane elaborated on how they could measure success through qualitative feedback, emotional assessments, and collaborative workshops with qualified artists. Each fact she presented felt like a building block cementing her competency and clarity. Point by point, she addressed anticipated concerns, rebutting vulnerabilities with tangible strategies, highlighting the program's importance. After concluding her presentation, Jane faced the panel with unwavering resolve. For the first time, she felt her confidence rooted firmly within her. Questions emerged from the board members, and she answered each with an ease she hadn't anticipated. The dialogue sparked an animated discussion, evolving into a collaborative exploration of how to bring the project to fruition. As the meeting approached its end, Jane felt a surge of gratitude and pride lightening her spirit. No longer were they simply colleagues assessing her projections. They had become partners in this shared vision. Marshall received the floor once more, his words a mixture of scrutiny and support. "This is indeed ambitious, Jane, but let's push beyond the initial concerns. Can we translate this into actionable timelines and measurable objectives? I believe you have the groundwork laid out, but now we need to elevate it." And with those words, something within Jane shifted, a final confirmation of her growth. She had wrestled her insecurities into submissions, emerging into clarity. She answered confidently, "Absolutely. I can lead the initiative, ensuring we align every aspect with our overall operational goals to maximize impact." The board nodded in consensus, their expressions transitioning from skepticism to inspiration. In that moment, Jane felt a swell of purpose, realizing that her journey thus far wasn't only about gaining recognition, it was about realizing her profound capacity to affect change. This confluence of a mother's love and a professional's ambition carved a pathway previously obscured by doubt. When she finally stepped out of the meeting room, Jane's heart soared. The bright lights of the corridors morphed into shimmering beacons of hope. She had accomplished what she set out to do, advocating for her son's vision while reaffirming her professional identity. This campaign would represent more than just art. It would encapsulate the intertwined lives of both mother and child, their resilience and love manifested in every card created. Later that evening, when she returned home, she found Danny sprawled across their living room floor, surrounded by markers and papers, already brainstorming ideas for their next steps. As he looked up and saw his mother, his smile was infectious, pure pride radiating from his youthful face. "Did it go well, Mom?" he asked, eyes wide with anticipation. With an ecstatic grin, Jane knelt down beside him. "It's just the beginning, Danny. We're going to make this happen, together." In that moment, as they began planning their next moves, Jane felt a profound shift within herself. She realized that through this journey, she wasn't just building a campaign, she was redefining her life narrative. Each challenge faced together with Danny forged a stronger bond and cultivated a profound sense of self-worth. As night fell, Jane understood that she had not only conquered her fears, she had emerged as a woman of purpose, ready to embrace the complexities and beauty of her journey ahead. Ready to face the future, her heart filled with gratitude, Jane felt solidified in her new role, a dedicated nurse and an empowered mother, fiercely championing change in themselves and their community. Now, let's take this journey together. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending below. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.